My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 32 years old. And I discovered my boyfriend's plan to fix me completely by accident. The funny thing is, if Ethan Brooks had simply talked to me, none of what happened next would have happened. Instead, he got creative. It started on a Wednesday afternoon. Ethan had left his email open on our shared laptop before heading out to meet a client. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to close browser tabs so I could pay a few bills. Then a subject line caught my attention. Enrollment confirmation. Feminine energy correction intensive. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw my name. Natalie Carter. Participant. Start date 2 weeks away. Program fee, $3. Lambe. I stared at the screen. My stomach dropped. I clicked the email, then another, and another. The thread stretched back nearly 3 months. 3 months. 3 months of Ethan discussing me with a counselor named Dr. Pierce. 3 months of him documenting what he called my concerning behaviors. According to Ethan, I spent too much time at the gym. I watched football with my older sister every Sunday. I played video games on Friday nights. I drank beer during family cookouts. I handled problems independently, instead of discussing every emotion immediately. I didn't cry at his cousin's wedding. I repaired things around the house, rather than talking about my feelings. Dr. Pierce's responses were somehow even worse. These behaviors often indicate resistance to healthy feminine vulnerability. We can help Natalie reconnect with emotional softness. Our intensive program specializes in correcting defensive independence. Correcting. That word sat in my brain like a splinter. Correcting? As if I were a broken appliance. As if the woman Ethan had chosen to date somehow wasn't acceptable anymore. I should have slammed the laptop shut. I should have called him immediately. Instead, I kept reading. That was my mistake. Because the deeper I dug, the angrier I became. One email mentioned that I might resist treatment. Another discussed intervention techniques. Another contained plans to surprise me. The night before the first session, Ethan wasn't asking. He wasn't suggesting. He was arranging my personal growth behind my back. The worst part wasn't the program. It was realizing he'd spent months telling strangers what was wrong with me. I sat there for nearly an hour. Then I noticed something interesting. The wellness center's name, Harmony Path Recovery Institute. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened a private browser window. Their website was fascinating. They offered programs for everything imaginable. Emotional regulation, conflict, reframing, feminine energy correction, attachment healing, relationship dependency recovery. That last one caught my eye. I clicked. The description sounded surprisingly familiar. Difficulty respecting boundaries. Excessive monitoring of loved ones. Need to manage a partner's choices. Controlling behavior disguised as care. Making decisions on behalf of others. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, humorless laugh. Because I suddenly knew exactly what I was going to do. The next day, while Ethan attended a networking event, I scheduled a consultation call. Dr. Morrison answered. She sounded warm and professional. I explained my concerns. I told her my boyfriend monitored my routines, questioned my hobbies, tried to reshape my personality, believed he knew what was best for me, secretly enrolled me in therapy, without my consent. There was a long pause. Then Dr. Morrison spoke carefully. Those behaviors can absolutely indicate unhealthy dependency and control. Interesting. Very interesting. By the end of the call, Ethan Brooks was officially enrolled in the same 8-week program. Same schedule, same building, different room, same cost, $3,200. Worth every cent. A week later, the intervention happened. I came home from work and found Ethan sitting in our living room. Beside him sat his mother, Patricia, his younger sister, Lorraine, and his female best friend, Chloe. Printed letters rested in all their hands. I almost burst out laughing. Natalie. Ethan began softly. We need to talk. About what? His mother leaned forward. We're worried about you. I sat down calmly. That's concerning. Lauren cleared her throat. You've become emotionally disconnected. I told Ethan I loved him this morning. Chloe jumped in. You avoid vulnerability. I cried during a documentary last week. Patricia frowned. You're aggressive. Because I disagree with people sometimes. They spent nearly an hour going in circles. Every accusation collapsed under basic questioning. Eventually, Ethan delivered the grand finale. I've already enrolled you in a program. Silence. Everyone watched me, waiting, expecting resistance, anger, a fight. Instead, I smiled. Okay. 4 jaws nearly hit the floor. Okay, Ethan repeated. If you think I need help, I trust your judgment. Suspicion flashed across his face. He sensed something, but not enough. Monday arrived. Orientation day. Ethan was practically vibrating with excitement. I'm proud of you, he said. This journey will be good for you. That's sweet. He smiled. I smiled back. Neither of us trusted the other. Halfway to the wellness center, I casually checked my phone. Oh. What? I got a reminder email. Ethan's expression changed. What reminder? I turned the screen toward him. Looks like your relationship dependency recovery program starts in Building B. His face went white. For a few seconds, Ethan just stared at my phone. I watched the color drain from his face. The silence inside the car became almost painful. Then he finally looked at me. You enrolled me in a therapy program. I raised an eyebrow. You enrolled me first. That's different. The answer came so quickly it sounded rehearsed. I laughed. There it is. There, what is? The part where your behavior is concern? But mine is a problem. His jaw tightened. I was trying to help you. And I was trying to help you. His hands clenched around the steering wheel. The irony seemed completely lost on him. I'm not going. Neither am I. You have to. So do you? We sat in the parking lot arguing for nearly 20 minutes. Every point he made against my enrollment applied perfectly to what he'd done to me. Every complaint sounded like a confession. Eventually, he crossed his arms. Fine. Fine. I'll go if you go. Deal. The receptionist at Harmony Path looked exhausted before we even reached the desk. Then she saw our paperwork. Then she looked at us. Then she looked back at the paperwork. I swear, I saw her fighting a smile. You enrolled each other, she asked. Neither of us answered. That was answer enough. A few minutes later, we disappeared into separate conference rooms. My program was called Feminine Energy Correction and Emotional Regulation. Just saying the name out loud made me cringe. Inside sat 5 other women. All of them looked confused. One looked furious. Another looked bored. The counselor, Dr. Pierce, greeted us with an enthusiastic smile. Welcome, ladies. Today begins your journey toward healthier emotional expression. Nobody spoke. Dr. Pierce tried again. Let's introduce ourselves and explain why we're here. The woman beside me sighed. My boyfriend signed me up. Another woman nodded. So did mine. The third woman rolled her eyes. Fiancé. The fourth pointed toward the door. Husband. Then everyone looked at me. My boyfriend. The room erupted into laughter. Not happy laughter. The exhausted kind. The kind people laugh when something is so ridiculous that crying would take too much effort. Meanwhile, Ethan was apparently having the exact opposite experience. I only learned that later. At the time, my phone began vibrating non-stop. Text after text after text. This is insane. These people think I'm controlling. How is caring about you controlling? My therapist is clearly biased. This program is ridiculous. I can't believe you did this. Respond. Natalie, respond. Are you reading these? Natalie. I counted them later. 71 messages in 2 hours. Relationship dependency recovery seemed to be hitting some nerves. When the session finally ended, I walked outside. Ethan was already waiting near the parking lot. His expression looked like he'd swallowed broken glass. How was your session? I asked. Horrible. I nodded sympathetically. Mine too. They made me do a boundary worksheet. Sounds educational. They claimed I violate your boundaries. I blinked. Interesting. They asked me what boundaries you have. And And I told them, you don't really need boundaries because we're partners. I stared at him, and what did they say? His face darkened. They said that response demonstrated unhealthy dependency. I nearly laughed. Nearly. The drive home was silent. Then, Ethan exploded. You know what? Fine. I looked over. What? We'll both finish these stupid programs. Okay. And at the end, we'll see who's right. I smiled. Sounds fair. That was the moment everything truly started unraveling. Because Ethan made one critical mistake. He assumed the program would prove him right. Instead, he started telling people about it. Everyone. His mother, his sister, his friends, co-workers, neighbors, anyone willing to listen. He framed it as a success story. As if he'd rescued me. As if I were undergoing some dramatic rehabilitation. Patricia called me one evening. I'm proud of you. For what? For finally getting help. I nearly dropped my phone. Lauren texted me. Maybe now Ethan can have the partner he deserves. Chloe started posting inspirational quotes online about supporting loved ones through personal growth. Every post felt directed at me. Every comment section turned into a discussion about my supposed emotional problems. The entire thing would have been humiliating if it weren't so absurd. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. I started excelling in my program, not because I agreed with everything, far from it, but because most of the exercises required basic communication skills and self-awareness. When you aren't actually suffering from the diagnosis they're treating, the assignments become surprisingly easy. Dr. Pierce started using my answers as examples. The other women jokingly called me teacher's favorite. One woman named Sophie became a close friend. Her boyfriend had enrolled her because she preferred spending one weekend a month alone. Apparently, independence was now a medical condition. Another woman, Rachel, had been signed up because she enjoyed weightlifting. A third attended because she preferred practical problem-solving over emotional processing. The similarities became impossible to ignore, week after week. I listened to stories from women whose partners wanted different versions of them. Softer versions, smaller versions, more convenient versions. Meanwhile, Ethan seemed to be having a far more difficult time. Every session challenged behaviors he'd spent years defending. The texts became less frequent. The complaints became quieter, though they never completely stopped. Then week 3 arrived, and everything exploded. Harmony Path organized a family integration workshop. Both programs together. One giant session. 2 counselors. 12 participants. One terrible idea. The room looked like a bizarre social experiment. Women from my group sat across from men from Ethan's group. Dr. Pierce stood near one wall. Dr. Morrison stood near the other. Neither seemed aware of the disaster waiting for them. We were assigned role-playing exercises, random pairings. I ended up partnered with a man named Marcus. Ethan was paired with a woman named Olivia. The assignment was simple. Practice healthy boundaries. Marcus looked at me. I'd like one evening each week to spend with friends. Sounds reasonable. I said, I can plan something else that night. Dr. Pierce smiled. Excellent. Across the room, Ethan was struggling. Olivia calmly stated, I need time occasionally without constant communication. Ethan frowned. But what if your partner worries? Then they manage their feelings. But shouldn't you reassure them? Sometimes. What if they need reassurance constantly? Dr. Morrison jumped in. And whose responsibility would that be? Ethan didn't answer. I could practically see steam rising from his ears. Then came the discussion portion. The counselors invited participants to share their experiences, and that's when Ethan made a mistake. He raised his hand. My girlfriend is also in therapy here. Both counselors smiled. That's wonderful. Doctor, Morrison said, couples working on themselves together often. She's in feminine energy correction. Dr. Pierce looked confused. I saw realization begin spreading through the room, slowly, painfully. Then Ethan pointed directly at me. The room went silent. Every head turned. Dr. Morrison looked at me, then at Ethan, then back at me. A terrible understanding crossed her face. Oh, Doctor Pierce whispered the same thing. Oh. The counselors exchanged a look. One of those looks professionals share when they realize they've stepped into a situation far stranger than expected. Doctor. Morrison cleared her throat. Ethan. Did you enroll Natalie in her program? Yes. The room got quieter. And, Natalie. I smiled politely. Yes. Did you enroll Ethan in yours? Yes. Marcus nearly choked. Someone in the back muttered, No way. A few participants started laughing. Doctor. Pierce rubbed his forehead. I had a feeling the session was about to become much more interesting. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The room felt frozen. Then, Marcus let out a low whistle. That's actually insane. A few people laughed. Not because it was funny, because it wasn't. Dr. Pierce pinched the bridge of his nose. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Neither Ethan nor I said anything. You enrolled your girlfriend in a corrective therapy program without her knowledge. Ethan crossed his arms. I was trying to help her. Doctor. Morrison immediately looked at me. And you enrolled your boyfriend in response? I thought he could benefit from relationship dependency recovery. Several participants started grinning. One woman actually covered her mouth to hide a laugh. The counselors looked horrified. The participants looked entertained. Ethan looked furious. Doctor. Morrison sighed. This may be one of the strangest situations we've ever encountered. I was helping her. Ethan repeated. Doctor. Morrison turned toward him. Ethan. Did Natalie ask to be enrolled? No. Did she consent? No. Then, that isn't help. His jaw tightened. You don't understand. No. Doctor. Morrison replied calmly. I think I understand very well. The atmosphere shifted, for the first time since this entire mess began. Someone was openly challenging him, and Ethan hated it. The remainder of the session became increasingly uncomfortable, especially for him. Every example used during boundary exercises seemed to mirror his behavior. Every discussion somehow circled back to control. Every attempt he made to justify himself sounded worse than the previous one. By the time the workshop ended, he was barely speaking. I thought maybe the experience would make him reflect. I was wrong. That night, he went nuclear. His mother called me first. Then Lauren. Then Clue. Then 3 mutual friends. Apparently, Ethan had spent the drive home explaining how I was weaponizing therapy against him. According to his version of events, I had humiliated him publicly. Never mind that he had secretly enrolled me first. That detail somehow kept disappearing from the story. Patricia called at nearly 10 o'clock. How could you do this to Ethan? I leaned back on the couch. Do what exactly? You embarrassed him. He secretly enrolled me in therapy. He was trying to help you. I closed my eyes. There it was again. The same sentence. The same justification. The same excuse. What if I had enrolled him in a weight loss program because I thought he needed it? That's different. Why? Silence. Patricia couldn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer. Eventually, she hung up. The following weeks became a strange mixture of conflict and unexpected growth. Something had changed. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But enough that I noticed. The biggest surprise was Ethan. Because despite fighting every lesson, parts of the program were getting through. Tiny cracks had started forming. I first noticed it during week 5. He came home unusually quiet. No arguments, no lectures, no criticism, just silence. I was making dinner when he suddenly spoke. Doctor. Morrison asked me something today. I looked over. What? He stared at the counter. She asked why I felt responsible for your choices. I waited. What did you say? That I'm your partner. And, he laughed bitterly. She said, being someone's partner doesn't make you their manager. The words hung in the air. I recognized them immediately. Because they were true. Ethan rubbed his face. Then she asked me when I last made a decision that wasn't connected to worrying about our relationship. I stayed quiet. I couldn't answer. For the first time, he sounded genuinely unsettled. Not angry. Not defensive. Confused. As though someone had handed him a mirror he wasn't ready to look into. Then he said something that surprised me. "Do you think I try to control you?" I almost laughed. Almost? Instead, I asked a question. "Do you want the honest answer?" His eyes met mine. "Yes." "You enrolled me in therapy because I watch football." He winced. "You track my location." His shoulders lowered. "You read my messages." No response. "You criticize my hobbies." Silence. "You keep trying to turn me into someone else." The room became very still. Finally he spoke. "I just wanted you to be better." The sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. And honesty can hurt more than anger. I looked at him carefully. Better than what? He opened his mouth, then stopped. Because he couldn't answer. Or maybe because he finally realized what the answer actually was. Better than me. The real me. The woman sitting across from him. The woman he'd supposedly loved for 3 years. That conversation ended there. But something fundamental had shifted. For both of us. Later that night, I overheard him talking to Lauren. His voice sounded different. "Les certains." "What if they're right?" he asked. Lauren immediately jumped in. "About what? What if I've been controlling?" "You're not controlling." "I secretly enrolled Natalie in therapy." "You were helping?" "I check her location constantly. Because you care." "I get anxious when she does things without me." "Because you're invested?" Every answer sounded like a defense attorney struggling with bad evidence. Even Ethan seemed to hear it. Because eventually he said something unexpected. "That doesn't sound healthy when you say it out loud." For once, Lauren didn't have a response. Meanwhile, I was having my own revelations. Not about emotional regulation. Not about feminine energy. Those concepts still felt ridiculous. But about how often people confuse difference with dysfunction. Many women in my group weren't broken. They were simply inconvenient. They didn't express emotions correctly. They weren't dependent enough. They weren't soft enough. They weren't compliant enough. One woman, named Sophie, summed it up perfectly. My boyfriend wanted a girlfriend. What he actually wanted was a customizable character. The room erupted with laughter, because every woman understood exactly what she meant. Week 7 arrived. Then came the accountability circle. Participants were asked to bring loved ones, witnesses, supporters, people who could observe their growth. Ethan was thrilled. He viewed it as his opportunity to finally prove he had been right all along. He invited Patricia, Lauren, Chloe, and several mutual friends. They arrived looking eager, almost excited. Like they expected to watch a public confession. I could practically hear their assumptions. Natalie finally realized she needed fixing. Natalie finally accepted responsibility. Natalie finally became the woman Ethan wanted. The session began. One by one, participants shared their experiences. Then my turn arrived. I stood. The room grew quiet. I looked at everyone, especially Ethan. Then I spoke. "I learned something important during these 8 weeks." Patricia smiled. Lauren leaned forward. Chloe folded her arms confidently. I continued. "I learned that watching football doesn't make me emotionally unavailable." Their smiles faded. "I learned that independence isn't dysfunction." Silence. "I learned that enjoying my hobbies doesn't mean I need correction." The room grew very still, and I learned that if someone secretly enrolls you in therapy because they want a different version of you, they're telling you something important. Ethan's face tightened. I looked directly at him. "They don't love who you are." The words landed like a grenade. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the counselor seemed frozen. Then Dr. Morrison quietly nodded, as if she had been waiting weeks for someone to finally say it out loud. Patricia shot to her feet. "That's not true." I calmly looked at her. "Then why did he try to change me?" No answer. Lauren stood next. "He wanted to help you. By secretly enrolling me in therapy." Silence. Chloe jumped in. "You're twisting everything." Before I could answer, Dr. Morrison spoke. "No." The room turned toward her. She continued carefully. "That's exactly the question we've been asking throughout this program." Then she looked directly at Ethan. And for the first time, he couldn't look away. The session ended in complete chaos. But the real explosion was still coming. Because later that night, Ethan gave me an ultimatum. And this time, There was no confusion about what he wanted. That night, Ethan stood in our living room with his arms folded across his chest. The accountability session had gone nothing like he expected. His mother had left angry. Lauren barely spoke during the drive home. Even Chloe seemed shaken. But instead of reflecting on any of that, Ethan doubled down. I need an answer. I looked up from the couch. About what? About us. There it was. The ultimatum. The final weapon people use when every other attempt to gain control has failed. His voice hardened. Either you admit you've got emotional issues and commit to changing, or we're done. For a moment, I just stared at him. 3 years together. 3 years of compromises. 3 years of trying to explain who I was. 3 years of being told that normal parts of my personality were somehow flaws. And somehow, it had all led here. To this. A demo? Not a conversation. Not a discussion. A demo. I slowly nodded. Okay. His eyes widened slightly. You'll do it. No. His expression froze. Then what does okay mean? It means we're done. The silence that followed felt endless. Because Ethan had expected a fight, he had expected tears, negotiation, begging, promises. He had expected resistance. What he wasn't prepared for was acceptance. His face went pale. You're serious? Yes. You'd throw away 3 years? I almost laughed. No. Ethan. I stood up. You threw away 3 years when you decided the woman you loved wasn't good enough. For the first time in our relationship, he had absolutely nothing to say. The following week was graduation week. My program held its final session on Thursday morning. Despite all the absurdity, I had actually gained something valuable from the experience, not from the diagnosis, not from the label, but from the people, from hearing story after story, from women who had spent years apologizing for being themselves. Dr. Pierce handed me my completion certificate. Then he smiled awkwardly. You know, Natalie, your situation forced us to reconsider a lot of things. Such as, he sighed. How often people get enrolled because someone wants to change them, instead of understand them. I nodded. That's a pretty important distinction. It is. He hesitated. We're reviewing our entire intake process. I couldn't help smiling. Glad my disaster could be educational. He laughed. Trust me. It was educational for everyone. Meanwhile, Ethan's graduation apparently went very differently. According to several participants, he spent most of the final session arguing with Dr. Morrison. He insisted he wasn't controlling. Everyone else simply misunderstood him. His behavior was concern, not dependency, protection, not control, love, not management. Dr. Morrison listened patiently, then delivered the sentence that reportedly ended the discussion. If every expression of independence feels like rejection, that's exactly what we've been trying to address. Ethan didn't accept his certificate. He left before the ceremony ended. I wish I could say that was the end. It wasn't, because 2 days later came the final intervention. I arrived home from work and immediately knew something was wrong. There were too many cars outside, too many voices inside. The second I opened the door, I saw them, Patricia, Lauren, Chloe, 2 mutual friends. And sitting quietly near the back was someone I had only met twice before. Ethan's father, Richard Brooks. He had flown in from another state. The room felt like an ambush. Patricia stood immediately. Sit down. Natalie. I almost turned around and left. Almost. Instead, I walked inside. What is this? Richard answered. We need to talk. I looked at Ethan. His expression told me everything. He thought this was his last chance, his final attempt to force a different outcome. Patricia stepped forward. You're making a terrible mistake. Lauren nodded. You need to stop being stubborn. Chloe folded her arms. Ethan loves you. I listened quietly. Then, Richard spoke. I want to hear both sides. That surprised everyone, especially Ethan. Patricia immediately jumped in. There's nothing to hear. Natalie is overreacting. Richard raised a hand. No. The room went silent. He looked directly at me. Tell me what happened. So I did. Not emotionally, Not dramatically, just facts. I pulled out my phone. Then I opened the original email chain. The enrollment confirmations. The counselor correspondence. The discussions about correcting my behavior. The plans for the intervention. Everything. Then I played audio recordings. Not secret recordings. Conversations Ethan knew had been recorded during counseling exercises. Recordings where he openly admitted he wanted me to become a different person. Recordings where he described my independence as a problem. The room became quieter with every minute. Eventually, the last recording ended. Nobody spoke. Richard sat perfectly still. Then he turned toward his son. "You enrolled her secretly." Ethan swallowed. "Yes? For her own good?" The phrase sounded ridiculous now. Even he seemed to hear it. Richard shook his head slowly. "No. Dad, no." His voice became firmer. "You don't get to decide who someone should be." Patricia immediately objected. "You don't understand." Richard turned toward her. "Oh. I understand perfectly." The room froze. Then he said something nobody expected. "I've seen this before." Patricia's face changed. Richard continued. 30 years ago. You signed me up for anger management because I like spending weekends fishing with friends." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Patricia looked horrified. Richard laughed bitterly. "I should have paid attention back then." The room exploded. Patricia started yelling. Lauren accused Richard of betrayal. Chloe called me manipulative. Mutual friends started arguing. Everyone talked over everyone. Complete chaos. And in the middle of it all, I suddenly felt calm. For the first time in months, maybe years. Because the truth was finally sitting in the open where everyone could see it. Nobody needed to defend it anymore. Nobody needed to explain it. The evidence spoke for itself. I quietly picked up my purse. Nobody noticed. They were too busy fighting. I walked to the door. Then, I left. The legal separation paperwork was filed the following week. The process was ugly. Ethan contested everything. Claimed I had emotionally manipulated him by enrolling him in therapy. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, particularly not the mediator handling the case. When the complete timeline was reviewed, the conclusion was obvious. The secret enrollment had started everything. Not the retaliation. The original act. Months passed. Harmony Path changed its policies. Consent verification became mandatory. No more surprise enrollments. No more interventions disguised as treatment. Apparently, our situation became legendary among the staff. As for Ethan, I heard he eventually returned to therapy. Real therapy. Not because someone forced him, because he finally chose it. I genuinely hope it helped. Whether he learned anything, I don't know. The last update I heard came from Sophie. Apparently, Ethan had started dating a woman named Megan. Things moved quickly. Then one day, Megan discovered he had signed her up for a personal growth workshop. Without asking, some habits die hard. As for me, life became surprisingly peaceful. About 8 months later, I met Daniel, a physical therapist. Skinned, bestial, comfortable in his own skin. The first time I mentioned football Sundays, he asked what snacks I liked. The first time I spent a weekend gaming, he brought takeout. The first time we disagreed about something, he simply accepted that we disagreed. No corrections, no projects, no improvements, no fixing, just acceptance. Funny how rare that can feel. Patricia still occasionally sends long emails about emotional growth. They're filtered directly into spam. Lauren posts vague social media quotes about toxic exes. Chloe remains convinced I'm the villain. Richard and I exchange holiday messages every year. He once texted me, "Sorry, my son inherited more from our family than I realized." I laughed for 10 straight minutes. Looking back, people often ask whether enrolling Ethan in that program was petty. Absolutely. Without question, it was petty. But it also exposed a truth neither of us could ignore. The moment someone starts planning how to fix you, they're revealing what they really think of you. Not who you might become. Not who they hope you'll be. Who you are right now. And if who you are right now isn't enough for them, no amount of therapy is going to save the relationship.